The human recruit's armor is falling apart during the ceremony, and the Supreme War Commander just went completely silent because those broken pieces are fragments of his supposedly indestructible personal shield. Mia Garcia stood in the front row of graduates, acutely aware that every alien cadet around her was staring at her patchwork armor. The chest plate had visible weld marks. The shoulder guards didn't quite match. One gauntlet was a completely different shade of gunmetal gray than the other. She'd done her best with what she had, but yeah, it looked rough compared to the pristine ceremonial armor everyone else wore. The snickering started from the back rows first, then rippled forward through the formation of alien cadets standing at attention in the Grand Assembly Hall. According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, Mia tried to ignore it, keeping her eyes forward on the elevated platform where Supreme Commander Khor'vax and the Academy instructors stood in their elaborate formal regalia. "The human can't even maintain basic equipment," someone hissed from 3 rows back, not bothering to whisper. Laughter followed. "Typical human craftsmanship," another voice added, "held together with hope and desperation." Mia felt her face flush but kept her jaw clenched. She'd worked her ass off for 6 months to make it through this academy. Yeah, her armor looked like shit, but it functioned. That was what mattered, right? Function over form. That's what her dad always said back in the Detroit garage where she'd learned to make anything work with whatever parts were available. Academy instructor Vex Thule, a towering reptilian with scales that gleamed like polished obsidian, stepped forward to address the assembly. His amber eyes swept across the graduates with obvious disapproval when they landed on Mia. "This is disgraceful," Vex Thule announced, his voice carrying across the massive hall. "The final ceremony demands respect. It demands excellence. It demands warriors who understand that their equipment is an extension of their honor." He gestured toward Mia with one clawed hand. Humans, it seems, lack the warrior discipline to comprehend this fundamental truth. More laughter from the alien cadets. Mia felt her hands ball into fists at her sides. She wanted to shout that her armor had saved her life in 3 different combat simulations, that it had better mobility than the standard issue crap, that she'd improved the cooling system and joint articulation with her modifications. But you didn't talk back during the final ceremony, not if you wanted to graduate. Then Supreme Commander Khor'vax moved. The laughter died instantly. Khor'vax was a legend, a warrior who'd led the Galactic Defense Forces for over a century, whose personal combat record was studied in every military academy across 40 systems. His armor was ceremonial but ancient, etched with battle honors that predated most species' spaceflight, and his shield, the massive circular shield that hung on the wall behind the platform, was the symbol of his unbroken, unbeaten career. Except the shield wasn't on the wall anymore. It had been missing for 3 weeks. Stolen, according to the rumors, the greatest security breach in Academy history. Khor'vax descended from the platform with measured steps, his 4 eyes fixed on Mia with an intensity that made her stomach drop. The assembled cadets parted before him like water, creating a path straight to where Mia stood. The massive commander stopped 3 feet in front of her, towering over her 5'6" frame. The hall was completely silent now. No one was laughing. Khor'vax's eyes weren't on Mia's face. They were scanning her armor with the focused attention of someone examining evidence at a crime scene. His gaze moved from the mismatched shoulder guard to the patched chest plate to the gauntlets that didn't quite match in color. "Where did you get that material?" His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. Mia blinked, confused. "Sir, I found it in the workshop. There was scrap metal in the fabrication bay after my armor got damaged in the—" "That metal!" Khor'vax's voice dropped even lower, and now Mia could see that his hands were trembling. Not with rage, with something else, something that looked like shock. "Describe where you found it." "The workshop, sir. 3rd sub-level. There were some curved pieces in the scrap bin. Good quality metal, so I—" "Curved pieces." Khor'vax reached out one massive hand, and Mia instinctively stepped back before forcing herself to hold position. His clawed finger traced the edge of her shoulder guard, following the gentle arc of the metal. "Show me your left gauntlet." Mia extended her arm. The commander's 4 eyes narrowed as he examined the gauntlet from every angle. Then he looked back at the empty space on the wall where his shield should have been hanging. "That's my shield," Khor'vax said, and his voice carried across the entire hall like a pronouncement of doom. The silence that followed was absolute. Mia heard her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. What?" she managed. "That metal you're wearing, those pieces you found in the scrap bin." Khor'vax's voice was still quiet, but now every cadet in the hall was leaning forward, straining to hear. "That is titanium-neutronium composite, the same alloy used in my personal shield. The shield that has been in my family for 500 years. The shield that has never been damaged in battle. The shield that went missing 3 weeks ago." Mia looked down at her armor, at the patchwork repairs she'd been so proud of. The metal did have an unusual shimmer to it. She'd thought it was just high-quality alloy. She'd thought, "Oh shit," she whispered. "You cut it." Khor'vax's statement wasn't a question. "You took my ancestral shield, the symbol of my honor, the artifact that has survived countless battles without a single scratch, and you cut it into pieces." "I didn't know." Mia's voice came out higher than she intended. "It was in the scrap bin. I thought it was just... there wasn't any label or anything. I needed to repair my armor after the training accident in the 0G combat sim, and my requisition for new parts got denied because of budget restrictions, so I..." Silence. The word wasn't shouted, but it hit like a physical force. Vex Thul had gone completely still on the platform, his amber eyes wide with what looked like religious horror. The other instructors were backing away from Khor'vax as if expecting an explosion. The assembled cadets had collectively taken 3 steps backward, leaving Mia isolated in a circle of empty space. Mia's mind raced through what she knew about alien warrior culture. Damaging a commander's personal effects was an insult. Stealing them was a capital offense. Destroying a sacred ancestral artifact? She didn't even know what category that fell into, but it probably involved words like execution and immediately. "Sir, I swear I didn't know," she said, hating how her voice shook. "If I'd known it was yours, if I'd known it was important, I never would have..." 500 years, Khor'vax interrupted, still staring at her armor. 500 years that shield has been in my family. Passed down from warrior to warrior, never once damaged, never once broken. The greatest smiths in the galaxy examined it and declared the alloy impossible to replicate, impossible to damage, impossible to reshape. His 4 eyes finally lifted to meet her gaze. "And you cut through it with workshop tools." Yes, sir. I used the plasma cutter. It took about 20 minutes to..." 20 minutes! This time his voice did boom across the hall, and Mia actually flinched. Several cadets in the back rows scrambled backward, tripping over each other. Mia swallowed hard. "Sir, I'm so sorry. I'll pay for it? I don't know how much a 500-year-old shield costs, but I can work it off. I can pay for it." Khor'vax's laugh was harsh and short. "Child, that shield was priceless. It was forged in the heart of a dying star by masters whose techniques are lost to time. It was supposedly indestructible." He gestured at her armor. "And you turned it into scrap metal repairs with basic workshop equipment." The implications of what she'd done were starting to sink in. Mia felt lightheaded. This was it. She was done. Court-martialed, probably. Maybe executed if alien military law was as harsh as she'd heard. All because she'd needed to fix her armor and had found some good metal in the scrap bin. "I didn't mean to destroy your artifact, sir," she said quietly. "I was just trying to fix my gear. Where I come from, if something's broken, you fix it with whatever you have available." Khor'vax stared at her for a long moment. Then his gaze moved back to her armor, examining the welded seams, the reworked plates, the modifications she'd made to improve mobility and weight distribution. "Instructor Vexthul," the commander said, still looking at Mia's armor. "Summon Chief Metallurgist Zara immediately and clear this hall. Everyone except the human is dismissed." The other cadets didn't need to be told twice. They fled. The Grand Assembly Hall emptied in under a minute, leaving only Mia, Commander Khor'vax, Instructor Vexthul, and a tension so thick Mia could have cut it with her plasma torch. She stood at attention, sweat trickling down her back inside her patchwork armor, while Khor'vax continued his silent examination of her repairs. "Explain the process," Khor'vax said finally. "Step by step, how you obtained the material and what you did with it." Mia took a breath. Honesty was probably her only play here. 3 weeks ago, I was in zero-G combat simulation. My opponent, Cadet Xelax, executed a pretty solid takedown that sent me into the wall at high speed. My chest plate cracked, left shoulder guard shattered, and my helmet's display system got fried. "I remember that incident," Vexthul interjected, his scaled face twisted with disapproval. "You were deemed at fault for failing to maintain proper spatial awareness." "Yeah, well, Xelax also failed to follow the no lethal force rule, but sure, let's focus on my spatial awareness." Mia couldn't quite keep the sarcasm out of her voice. "Anyway, my armor was trashed. I submitted a requisition for replacement parts, got denied due to budget constraints and low priority status." She made air quotes with her fingers. "So I did what I always do when I need parts and don't have money. I went to the workshop to see what I could salvage." "And you found my shield in the scrap bin." Khor'vax's voice was still dangerously quiet. "I found curved metal pieces in the scrap bin," Mia corrected. "There was no label, no identification marking, nothing that said, 'Hey, this is a priceless 500-year-old artifact, don't touch.' It was just sitting there with broken training equipment and damaged hull plating. I thought someone had tossed out good metal by mistake." "The shield was stolen from my quarters," Khor'vax said. "We've been searching for it for 3 weeks. You're telling me the thief simply threw it away?" Mia shrugged, and her modified shoulder guard moved with a smoothness that made Khor'vax's eyes narrow. "I don't know anything about theft, sir. I just know I found quality metal and I needed it. So I used standard earth metalworking techniques: measure, cut, weld, reshape, basic stuff." "Basic!" Vexthul's voice came out as a hiss. "You cut through titanium-neutronium composite with basic techniques?" "I mean, I used a plasma cutter. That's pretty standard for working with dense alloys." Mia looked between the two alien officers. "Why? What's the big deal with this specific metal?" "The big deal," Khor'vax said slowly, "is that titanium-neutronium composite is unbreakable. The alloy was created by ancient masters using techniques we can no longer replicate. The molecular bonds are supposed to be impossible to sever. We've had the galaxy's best metallurgists examine pieces of that shield, and they all confirmed that working with this material is beyond our current capabilities." Mia frowned. "Well, my plasma cutter went through it fine. Took about 20 minutes to cut the pieces I needed. The metal's pretty tough, definitely denser than standard combat-grade alloys, but it's not like it's magic or anything. You just need the right temperature and a steady hand." The look on Khor'vax's face was somewhere between outrage and fascination. 20 minutes, he repeated. "You're telling me you casually cut through an alloy that our best scientists have been trying to work with for centuries, and it took you 20 minutes? "Well, I had to measure and mark my cuts first, so really the cutting was only like 15 minutes. The other 5 was prep work." Mia paused. "Am I in trouble? Because if this is about the material's cost, I can pay you back. I don't know what 500-year-old metal goes for, but I can set up a payment plan or—" The door to the assembly hall burst open, and a crystalline being that Mia recognized as Chief Metallurgist Zara rushed in, followed by 3 assistants carrying scanning equipment. Zara's translucent form refracted the overhead lighting into rainbow patterns as she moved. "Commander, I came as quickly as possible. You said there's been a development regarding your shield?" Zara's multifaceted eyes fixed on Mia and she stopped short. Why is that cadet wearing what appears to be It's my shield, Khor'vax confirmed. Or rather, it was my shield. The human cut it into pieces and welded it to her armor. Zara made a sound like breaking glass. Her assistants dropped their scanning equipment. One of them actually fainted. That's impossible, Zara whispered, moving closer to Mia. The molecular structure of titanium-neutronium composite can't be altered by conventional means. The bonding process requires stellar-level temperatures and pressures. It's theoretically impossible to cut, reshape, or weld this material. And yet, Mia gestured to her armor, here we are. Zara extended a crystalline appendage toward Mia's chest plate, then hesitated. May I? Sure. Mia stood still while Zara ran some kind of scanning device over her armor. The metallurgist's color shifted from clear to a pale blue, which Mia had learned meant she was experiencing intense focus or stress. This is the molecular signature matches, Zara said, her voice hushed with something approaching religious awe. This is definitely the commander's shield, but the structure has been altered. The bonds have been severed and reformed. There are weld marks that show successful fusion between the original material and standard combat alloy. She looked up at Khor'vax. Commander, this shouldn't be possible with our technology. We've been trying to replicate this alloy for 3 centuries. We've never succeeded in even scratching it, let alone cutting and reshaping it. The human did it with workshop tools, Vexthul said, and he sounded personally offended by this fact. Zara's attention snapped back to Mia. What tools did you use? What technique? What temperature settings? Standard plasma cutter from the workshop. I think it was set to about 4,500 Kelvin, maybe 5,000. I adjusted it up when I noticed the metal was denser than usual. Mia shifted uncomfortably under the intense scrutiny. And I used basic welding techniques, clean the surfaces, flux the joints, fuse with a steady hand. Same stuff I learned working on cars in Detroit. Cars, Zara repeated flatly. You learn to work with the most advanced alloy in known space by repairing ground vehicles. I mean, the principles are the same. Metal is metal. You heat it up enough, it melts. You control the melt, you can shape it. Mia was starting to feel defensive. Look, I didn't destroy your shield, okay? I fixed my armor. Your standard issue stuff broke in one collision. Mine's been through 5 more combat sims since I made these repairs, and it's holding up perfectly. Khor'vax stepped forward, his attention now focused on the modified shoulder guard. Show me the range of motion, Mia demonstrated, raising her arm, rotating the shoulder, executing a series of combat movements. The armor moved with her smoothly, without the slight catching and resistance that standard issue armor always had. You improved it, Khor'vax said, and it wasn't a question. Well, yeah, the original design of this shoulder guard is terrible. The joint mobility is restricted by like 30% compared to natural range of motion, so when I was reworking the metal, I redesigned the articulation points. Better weight distribution too, moved the center of mass closer to the body's natural balance point, and I added cooling vents here and here. Mia pointed to small modifications along the sides. The standard armor has a heat retention problem after extended combat. These vents solve that. Vexthul looked like he'd been slapped. You altered military-grade equipment design based on your own assessment? Based on the fact that the original design sucks, Mia said bluntly. No offense, but whoever engineered this armor never actually wore it in combat. The mobility restrictions alone are dangerous. I almost got killed because I couldn't raise my arm fast enough to block in the third sim. Zara was now examining the weld points with her scanner, making small, distressed noises. The fusion is perfect, better than perfect. The bond strength here is actually superior to the original material. How is that possible? Good welding technique? Mia offered. I've been doing this since I was 12. My dad owned a body shop in Detroit. You learn to make strong repairs when people's lives depend on their vehicles holding together. She's outperforming military-grade equipment, Khor'vax said quietly, still examining the armor modifications. With repairs made from scrap metal and earth automotive techniques. He looked at Zara. What are the combat performance implications? Zara ran another scan and her color shifted to a deep purple. Based on these readings, Commander, this armor would outperform our standard issue equipment by approximately 30 to 40%. The modifications she made to joint mobility alone would give a significant combat advantage. And the cooling system, she trailed off, shaking her head. We've been trying to solve the heat retention problem for years. So let me get this straight, Mia said, feeling a strange mix of pride and panic. I took your sacred, unbreakable artifact, cut it up with basic tools, welded it to my broken armor using techniques I learned in my dad's garage, and accidentally created better combat gear than your engineers have designed. The silence that followed was answer enough. Am I in trouble or not? Mia asked. Because this is really confusing. Zara spent the next hour running every test in her arsenal on Mia's armor while Khor'vax watched in silence and Vexthul paced like a caged predator. Mia stood patiently, trying not to think about the fact that her entire military career, and possibly her life, hung in the balance of whatever these scans revealed. This is remarkable, Zara murmured, adjusting her scanning equipment for the 5th time. The weld points aren't just functional, they're actually stronger than the original material bonds. The molecular integration shows a level of precision that our automated systems can't achieve. She looked up at Mia with something approaching reverence. How did you learn this technique? My dad taught me, Mia said with a shrug. When you're welding a car frame, you can't have weak points. People die if the weld fails during a crash. So you learn to do it right, or you don't do it at all. But the calculations required to determine proper heat distribution, the angles of fusion, I didn't calculate anything, Mia interrupted. I just felt it. You do something enough times, you develop an intuition for it. You can tell by the color of the metal, the way it flows, whether you're getting a good bond or not. Zara's crystalline form flickered through several colors that Mia couldn't interpret. You're describing advanced materials engineering as intuition. I'm describing welding as something you learn by doing. Mia was getting tired of standing at attention. Look, is this going somewhere? Because my legs are starting to cramp. At ease, cadet, Khor'vax said absently, his attention fixed on Zara's scanner displays. Chief Metallurgist. What's your assessment of the armor's combat effectiveness? Zara pulled up a holographic comparison chart. Based on structural integrity, mobility metrics, and thermal management, the human's modified armor outperforms our standard issue equipment by 34%. In some metrics, specifically joint mobility and sustained combat duration, the improvement is closer to 50%. Vexthul stopped pacing. That's impossible. Our armor is designed by the finest military engineers in the galaxy. Your armor is designed by people who never had to fix anything with duct tape and prayer, Mia muttered. What was that? Khor'vax's 4 eyes fixed on her. Mia straightened, realizing she'd said that out loud. Sorry, sir, but okay, can I be honest here? I would prefer honesty to whatever diplomatic dancing you think is appropriate, Khor'vax said dryly. Your armor design is terrible. Mia gestured at Vexthul's ceremonial gear. It's built like it's supposed to be perfect and never fail. That's not how combat works. Equipment breaks. Stuff fails. You need gear that can be fixed in the field with whatever you have available, not equipment that's so perfect it becomes useless the moment something goes wrong. Our equipment is tested to exacting standards, Vexthul said coldly. It is designed to be unbreakable. And yet mine broke in one training accident, Mia shot back. Look, I get it. You want the best possible materials, the strongest possible construction, but you're so focused on creating perfect, unbreakable stuff that you forget the first rule of engineering. Everything breaks eventually. The question isn't if it'll break, It's whether you can fix it when it does. Zara's colors shifted to a thoughtful green. You're describing a fundamentally different engineering philosophy. Our metallurgy focuses on creating materials that resist failure. You're saying human engineering assumes failure and optimizes for repairability? Of course, Mia said. What else would we do? We don't have magic unbreakable metals on Earth. We have steel and aluminum and composites that are good enough, and when they break, we fix them. That's just normal. It's not normal here, Khor'vax said quietly. He was looking at his empty shield mounting with an expression Mia couldn't quite read. In our warrior culture, broken equipment represents failure, dishonor. A warrior who cannot maintain their gear is considered unworthy. The condition of one's equipment reflects the condition of one's spirit. That's stupid, Mia said, then immediately winced. Sorry, sir, but that's incredibly impractical. Gear breaks in combat. That's not a moral failing, it's physics. If your culture treats necessary repairs as shameful, then you're just setting yourselves up to fight with damaged equipment because no one wants to admit something broke. The silence that followed was profound. Vexthul looked like he'd been struck by lightning. Zara had gone completely transparent, which Mia had learned meant she was processing something overwhelming. Khor'vax spoke first. Explain Earth's combat philosophy regarding equipment maintenance. Mia thought about it for a moment. Duct tape, zip ties, and creative problem solving. If it breaks, you fix it with whatever you have. If you can't fix it properly, you fix it improperly and deal with the consequences later. The goal isn't perfection, it's functionality. A weapon that works at 60% effectiveness is better than a perfect weapon that's broken and can't be repaired. You're saying your entire species just assumes failure and improvises? Vexthul asked, and he sounded genuinely disturbed. Well, yeah, how else would you do it? Mia looked at their shocked faces and felt a strange sense of disconnect. Wait, you guys don't plan for equipment failure? You just hope everything works perfectly all the time? Our equipment is designed to exacting specifications, Vexthul said, but he sounded less certain now. Tested to rigorous standards, built to last. Built to last isn't the same as built to be repaired, Mia countered. Your shield, Commander. It was supposedly indestructible, right? 500 years without a scratch. But that's not because it was actually unbreakable. It's because no one ever stressed it properly or knew how to work with it if they needed to. You treated it like a sacred object instead of a tool. The moment someone, me, needed to actually use the metal for something practical, it turned out to be just a really good alloy that could be cut and shaped like anything else. Khor'vax's expression was unreadable. You're suggesting that my family's greatest treasure, the symbol of our unbroken lineage, was simply good metal that we didn't know how to use? I'm suggesting it was both, Mia said carefully. It's definitely high-quality stuff. The density and durability are impressive, but calling it indestructible and treating it like it could never be altered? That's not respecting the material. That's limiting its potential. I turned it into something that actually protects someone in combat. That seems like a better use than hanging on a wall. Zara had been running calculations on her scanner throughout this conversation. Now she looked up, her crystalline form glowing with an inner light that suggested excitement or distress. Mia still wasn't sure which. Commander, I need to share something troubling. If the human's engineering philosophy is correct, if repairability is more important than theoretical perfection, then our entire military equipment doctrine may be fundamentally flawed. Explain, Khor'vax commanded. We design for zero-failure scenarios. Every piece of equipment is tested to ensure it won't break under expected combat conditions. But we don't design for field repair because the cultural assumption is that properly maintained equipment shouldn't need repair. Zara's colors shifted to an agitated orange. Which means when equipment does fail, as it inevitably must under unexpected conditions, our warriors are left with gear they can't fix, and a cultural taboo against admitting the failure in the first place. That would explain the casualty reports from the Outer Rim conflicts, Vexithul said slowly, horror dawning in his amber eyes. Warriors dying because they continued fighting with damaged equipment rather than report the failures and request replacements. They died because they couldn't fix their own gear, Mia said quietly, and they were too ashamed to admit it was broken. That's not honor, that's just waste. Khor'vax turned to face the empty shield mounting on the wall, his back to the group. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been grief or might have been understanding. My entire reputation was built on that shield, on the fact that it had never been damaged in 500 years of service. Every warrior who looked at it saw proof that perfection was achievable, that failure could be avoided through discipline and honor. He turned back to face Mia. And you're telling me it was just good metal that my ancestors didn't know how to work with? Sir, I think your ancestors knew exactly how good it was, Mia said. They just had different priorities. They wanted a symbol that would last forever. You got that. But I needed armor that would keep me alive in combat. So I used the metal differently. Neither use is wrong. They're just different. But only one use is practical for warriors, Zara said softly. Commander, if other human recruits are applying similar engineering principles to their equipment, then we have dozens of cadets running around with improvised modifications that probably outperform our standard issue gear, Khor'vax finished. He looked at Vexithul. How many human recruits do we currently have enrolled? 47 across all training cohorts, Vexithul replied, his scales paling. And we've been discouraging their modifications as undisciplined and lacking proper respect for equipment, while they've been improving their combat effectiveness using techniques we literally can't replicate, Khor'vax said. Zara, I want a full assessment of every human recruit's equipment. Document every modification, every improvised repair, every deviation from standard specifications. Yes, Commander. Zara was already making notes on her scanner. And Instructor Vexithul. Khor'vax's voice hardened. We're going to need to completely overhaul our equipment maintenance doctrine, starting with eliminating the cultural stigma against field repairs. Vexithul looked like he'd aged a century in the past hour. That will require significant cultural adjustment, Commander. War requires adaptability, not pride, Khor'vax said. He looked back at Mia, and for the first time since the ceremony began, something like approval flickered in his eyes. Cadet Garcia, you are not in trouble. Mia felt tension she didn't know she'd been carrying drain from her shoulders. Thank you, sir. However, Khor'vax continued, you're going to help us fix a problem. A big one. Zara presented her findings to an emergency assembly of senior military staff 3 hours later. Mia stood at attention in the briefing room, surrounded by commanders and instructors who'd spent decades building their reputations on the principles that were about to be dismantled. After comprehensive analysis of Cadet Garcia's equipment modifications and interviews with our 47 human recruits, I've identified a fundamental philosophical divide, Zara began, her crystalline form projecting holographic data across the room. We've been approaching engineering as perfectionists. Humans approach it as pragmatists. We create unbreakable materials. They create fixable ones. We design equipment that should never fail. They design equipment assuming failure and optimizing for field repair. She pulled up side-by-side comparisons of alien and human-modified armor. Our technology pursues theoretical perfection, which makes it brittle, unrepairable, and ultimately ceremonial. Human technology embraces practical imperfection, which makes it robust, fixable, and genuinely functional in sustained combat scenarios. You're saying our equipment is ceremonial? General R. Hill, a decorated veteran with scales that bore the marks of 40 campaigns, looked insulted. I've fought in that armor for decades. And how many times did you have to return to base for repairs when it was damaged? Zara asked gently. How many battles did you sit out because field repairs weren't possible? Rahil's silence was answer enough. Cadet Garcia's armor is superior in combat because it's designed to be field repaired, Zara continued. Every modification she made assumes that components will be damaged and need replacement or adjustment. The joints are modular. The plates can be swapped out. The cooling system can be cleaned and maintained without specialized tools. She's not thinking about equipment that never breaks. She's thinking about equipment that can be fixed quickly when it does break. Khor'vax had been silent throughout the presentation, studying the data with his 4 eyes moving independently across different displays. Now he spoke. "We've been making ceremonial art. Humans make tools." The statement hung in the air like an indictment. "Commander, I must object," Vexthul started. "No." Khor'vax cut him off. "Look at the data, instructor. Human-modified equipment outperforms our standard issue across every practical metric. The only category where our equipment exceeds theirs is aesthetic uniformity." He turned to Mia. "Cadet Garcia, explain your engineering philosophy in your own words." Mia shifted uncomfortably, acutely aware that she was a first-year cadet addressing a room full of generals and decorated veterans. "Look, on Earth, we don't have magic unbreakable metals. We've got steel, aluminum, composite materials that are good enough for most purposes, and stuff breaks. Cars break down. Buildings need repairs. Equipment fails. That's just reality, so you learn to fix things with whatever you have available." "Tell them about Detroit," Zara prompted. Mia blinked, surprised the metallurgist had been paying attention during their earlier conversations. "I grew up in Detroit. My dad owned a body shop. We worked on cars that people needed to keep running because they couldn't afford new ones. You learn real fast that perfection is the enemy of functional. A repair that gets someone home safely is better than no car at all because you're waiting for the perfect factory part." She gestured at her armor. "My first car was held together with wire coat hangers and prayer. The passenger door didn't open from the outside. The heat didn't work, but it ran, and it got me to school and work for 3 years because I kept fixing it every time something broke. That's human engineering. Make it work with what you have, fix it when it breaks, and keep moving forward." "That's survivor mentality, not warrior mentality," Rahil said, but his tone was more thoughtful than critical now. "Maybe that's why we survive," Mia replied. "Warrior culture says broken equipment is shameful, right? So warriors hide damage, fight with compromised gear, die because they won't admit something failed. Survivor culture says everything breaks eventually, failure is expected, and there's no shame in fixing things, only in not trying." Khor'vax stood and approached Mia's position. He moved slowly around her, examining every angle of her modified armor with the attention of someone seeing it for the first time. His clawed hand traced the weld marks on her shoulder guard, the cooling vents she'd added, the redesigned joint articulation. "I want you to teach," he said finally. "Sir?" "Metallurgy classes, equipment maintenance, field repair techniques. Whatever you want to call it." Khor'vax met her eyes. "You're going to teach our cadets how to think like humans when it comes to equipment, how to fix instead of replace, how to adapt instead of fail." "Commander, I'm not a teacher," Mia protested. "I'm a mechanic. I just fix stuff. I don't have lesson plans or curriculum or—" "You have something better," Khor'vax interrupted. "You have practical experience and a complete lack of our cultural baggage about perfection and honor. You'll teach because you don't know you're supposed to think it's impossible." He turned to address the room. "As of this moment, human practical engineering is a mandatory course for all cadets. Cadet Garcia will design the curriculum with Chief Metallurgist Zara's assistance." "This is highly irregular," Vexthul said, but he sounded resigned rather than opposed. "So is having equipment that warriors can't repair in the field," Khor'vax shot back. "How many have we lost, Vexthul? How many warriors died in the Outer Rim because their gear failed and they couldn't fix it? Because they were too proud to admit something was broken?" Vexthul's scales darkened with shame. "Too many, Commander." "Then we change, starting now." Khor'vax looked back at Mia. "I wasn't Disrespecting your work when I recognize the shield, Cadet Garcia. I was shocked because you accomplished something our master smiths declared impossible. You took metal they said couldn't be worked and turned it into something that serves a real purpose. I wasn't disrespecting your shield either, sir, Mia said quietly. I was just using good metal efficiently. Where I come from, leaving quality materials unused is the real waste. Your shield was beautiful on the wall, but it wasn't protecting anyone. Now it is. Something shifted in Khor'vax's expression. Acceptance, maybe, or the beginning of it. My family passed that shield down for 500 years because it never broke. But you're right. It never broke because we never used it for anything that mattered. We preserved it perfectly while warriors died with inferior equipment. He looked at the assembled officers. My ancestor who forged that shield was a warrior, not a jeweler. He'd be appalled that we turned his combat tool into a decoration. Cadet Garcia honored his intent better than 5 centuries of my family did. The room was silent. Then General R. Hill stood, his scales shifting to a color Mia had learned indicated respect. Commander, I request permission to have Cadet Garcia assess my personal equipment. Granted. Khor'vax looked around the room. Any other requests? Every hand went up. Zara's colors shifted to an amused pink. Cadet Garcia, I believe you're about to become very busy. Great, Mia muttered. I just wanted to graduate, and maybe not die in training. Now I'm running a crash course in how to not be precious about your gear 101. But she was smiling despite herself, because for the first time since arriving at this academy, someone was valuing what she actually knew instead of mocking her for not fitting their perfect warrior mold. One more thing, Khor'vax said. He removed one of his ceremonial rank insignias, a badge of honor that had been in his family almost as long as the shield. He held it out to Mia, for innovation in the field and practical application of combat engineering. Mia took the badge carefully. Sir, this seems important. It is, that's why you're getting it. Khor'vax's 4 eyes held something that might have been respect. You destroyed a 500-year-old symbol of unbroken perfection and created something better. That deserves recognition. Mia looked down at the badge in her hand, then back at the commander. My dad always said the best repair is the one that makes something work better than it did before. I guess I just followed his advice. Then your father is a wise man, Khor'vax said, and our military is about to get a lot more practical because of what he taught you. The graduation ceremony resumed 2 hours later, though the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Mia stood in formation with the other cadets, but now the whispers around her carried awe instead of mockery. Her patchwork armor, once a source of embarrassment, had become the most talked-about equipment in Academy history. Supreme Commander Khor'vax stepped forward to present the final commendations, and Mia's name was called first. Cadet Mia Garcia, Khor'vax announced to the assembled crowd, his voice carrying across the Grand Assembly Hall. For innovation in field repair and practical engineering, demonstrating that true warrior excellence lies not in avoiding failure, but in adapting when it occurs. Your approach to equipment maintenance has fundamentally altered this academy's understanding of combat readiness. Mia accepted the Commendation badge, a gleaming piece of metal that probably cost more than her first car, and couldn't help but ask, So, I'm not in trouble for cutting up your shield? Khor'vax's mandibles curved in what Mia had learned was his species' version of a smile. You improved it, cadet. That's the opposite of trouble. The ceremony concluded with unprecedented applause, and as the cadets dispersed, Mia found herself surrounded by aliens who'd been laughing at her armor an hour ago. Now they wanted advice. Can you look at my gauntlets? The finger articulation is terrible. My chest plate overheats after 20 minutes of combat. Is that fixable? I heard you can make cooling vents that actually work. Can you show me how? Mia fielded questions for 30 minutes before Zara rescued her, the crystalline metallurgist glowing with barely contained excitement. Cadet Garcia, there's something you need to see. Zara led her to a warehouse facility Mia had never accessed before. When the massive doors slid open, Mia's jaw dropped. Row after row of equipment stretched into the distance, armor pieces, weapons, tools, components, all tagged with variations of irreparable, damaged beyond recovery, or awaiting disposal. This is centuries of equipment we couldn't fix, Zara explained. Once something breaks beyond our ability to repair with standard procedures, we store it here. Eventually, it gets recycled into raw materials, but the process is slow and expensive. Mia walked down the first row, running her hands over damaged armor that looked like it just needed new welds, weapons with blown power cells that could be replaced, tools with broken handles that could be reattached. "This is all fixable," she said, her voice hushed with something approaching religious fervor. "Zara, this is like the world's best junkyard. I love junkyards." Junkyard? Zara's colors shifted to confused orange. Places where humans take broken stuff to find parts or fix things. Mia was already pulling a damaged chest plate off a shelf, examining the stress fractures. "Oh man, I can work with this. Give me a week in the workshop and half this warehouse will be combat ready again." Khor'vax appeared in the warehouse doorway, having followed them from the ceremony. "Your species turns trash into treasure?" "We call it upcycling," Mia said, not looking up from the chest plate. "You call it impossible. We call it Tuesday." She glanced back at the commander. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to make this my first project, teaching cadets practical repair using real broken equipment." Permission granted. Khor'vax watched her examine the damaged gear with the focused attention of a master craftsman, or a scavenger who'd learned to see value where others saw waste. "Cadet Garcia, do you realize what you've done?" "Fixed my armor," Mia offered. "Changed the entire galactic military's approach to equipment maintenance," Khor'vax corrected. "Zara sent your assessment reports to the Galactic Defense Council this morning. We're already receiving requests from other academies for human repair specialists. Military effectiveness is projected to increase by 15 to 20% across all forces simply by implementing human field repair doctrine." Mia blinked. "Seriously? Just because I know how to weld?" "Because you know how to adapt," Zara corrected. "We've been chasing perfection, creating equipment so advanced and specialized that it becomes useless the moment something goes wrong. You create solutions that assume things will go wrong and still function anyway. That's not inferior technology. That's superior philosophy." The implications were still sinking in when Mia's personal comm buzzed. Message from her mom. "How's space military school going, sweetie?" Mia typed back, "Good. Accidentally started a cultural revolution by fixing my armor with scrap metal." "What?" "Long story. They don't believe in repairs here. It's weird. Everyone treats broken stuff like it's cursed or something." "That is weird. Your father would have a field day." "Tell Dad I used his techniques to cut through unbreakable alien metal. He'll get a kick out of that." "He already thinks you're making this up, lol." Mia pocketed her comm and turned back to find a crowd had gathered at the warehouse entrance. Alien cadets, instructors, even some of the senior officers were watching her examine the broken equipment with expressions ranging from fascination to disbelief. "Okay," Mia said, gesturing to the warehouse full of damaged gear. "Who wants to learn how to actually fix things instead of just throwing them away?" Every hand went up. By the next morning, the academy workshops had been completely reorganized. Human-style repair tools, plasma cutters that could actually cut through dense alloys, welding equipment designed for field repairs, diagnostic tools that assumed components would fail, were being installed alongside the traditional perfect condition maintenance equipment. The sacred artifacts room was being inventoried, with items re-evaluated as potential usable resources rather than untouchable relics. Mia set up her first practical repair class in the warehouse, with 25 alien cadets clustered around her as she demonstrated welding techniques on a damaged shoulder guard. Vexithul observed from the back, taking notes with an intensity that suggested his entire worldview was being rebuilt from the ground up. She's not even using our advanced diagnostic tools, Vexthul murmured to Zara. She doesn't need to, Zara replied, her crystalline form glowing with satisfaction. Human tools assume things break. They're designed around the expectation of failure and the necessity of field repair. Our tools assume everything works perfectly until it catastrophically doesn't. We prepared for victory, Vexthul said slowly. Humans prepared for everything going wrong. And paradoxically, that makes them more effective in combat, Zara confirmed, because things always go wrong eventually. In the command center 3 levels above, Khor'vax reviewed holographic reports from across the galactic military network, academies requesting human instructors, field commanders implementing improvised repair protocols, survival rates increasing in combat zones where human repair techniques had been adopted. The data was undeniable. Human pragmatism was outperforming alien perfectionism across every metric that mattered. Commander, his aide reported, we're receiving inquiries about assigning human specialists to frontline units. Apparently, several generals witnessed the improvement in equipment functionality after implementing the new protocols. Approve all requests, Khor'vax said. Prioritize units in active combat zones. Human repair doctrine could save thousands of lives. From the workshop below, the sound of Mia's plasma torch echoed up through the ventilation systems, accompanied by her voice explaining some technical process with the casual confidence of someone who'd been doing this since childhood. Then laughter, the kind of genuine, unself-conscious laughter that came from someone who found joy in the work itself. They don't make weapons, Zara said softly, appearing beside Khor'vax at the viewport overlooking the workshop. They make everything into tools, and if needed, they make everything into weapons, not through superior technology, but through superior adaptability. How did they survive their homeworld? Vexthul asked, joining them. A planet with that level of gravity, that extreme weather, predators that hunt them. How did humans not go extinct? By assuming nothing was permanent and adapting constantly, Khor'vax said. He watched Mia show a cadet how to properly weld 2 pieces of supposedly incompatible alloys, her hands steady and sure. They didn't evolve to avoid failure. They evolved to recover from it. And in doing so, they became more resilient than species that achieved perfection and then stagnated. Another sound from the workshop, Mia's voice raised in delight. Oh, this is easy to fix. You just need the right attitude and a plasma torch. Here, watch this. The sound of metal being cut, shaped, reformed. Another irreparable artifact becoming something useful again. Another piece of ceremonial perfection, transformed into practical effectiveness. She's going to rebuild our entire military culture 1 repair at a time, Vexthul observed. Good, Khor'vax said. It's about time someone did. 3 months later, Mia Garcia would receive a formal commendation from the Galactic Defense Council for revolutionary contributions to military equipment doctrine. By then, her techniques would be taught at 47 academies across 20 systems. Human repair specialists would be the most requested personnel in the entire military, and Khor'vax's family shield, now integrated into combat armor that had saved 3 lives in actual combat, would be held up as the symbol of a new era, one where practical effectiveness mattered more than ceremonial perfection. But in that moment, in that warehouse workshop, Mia was just doing what came naturally to every human who'd ever fixed a broken car, patched a torn jacket, or made something work with duct tape and determination. She was solving problems with whatever she had available, and in doing so, she was teaching the galaxy that sometimes the most advanced technology isn't the one that never breaks. It's the one you can fix when it does.